Get started, and anyone who's joining right now is only going to miss my less important introduction. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us, as I said, for the first of our 2 community listening sessions for the Newcastle Council on Race and Equity. I'm Newcastle Town Supervisor Ivy Poole. I'm joined tonight by our co-chairs for the Council on Race and Equity, Zabine Mirza and Nichelle Maynard-Elliott, as well as members of the Newcastle Town Board, Jason Lichtenthal and Lauren Levin. I know I've seen, and I know the others are planning on joining us, Lisa Katz and Jeremy Saland as well. The purpose of the Newcastle Council on Race and Equity is for us to take a good look in the mirror as a community, understanding that what we are in right now is a nationwide movement inspired by recent racist acts and the protests and demonstrations and conversations that have been happening across the country. We're a part of that, and we feel that. And of course, we feel this even more strongly here in the town of Newcastle in light of recent things that have come up, the videos that we have all seen, the social media posts that we have all seen here in our own community. It's time for us to not only participate in the national conversations that are happening, but as I said, to take a look in the mirror and to think about how we as a community can change in order to become the kind of community that not only recognizes and sees the people of color who live within our community, but who support and uplift those community members. That's what we're all about. We have a council that is over 90 people strong. We had a tremendous response to our call for volunteers, and Zabine and Nichelle as co-chairs have done an outstanding job of organizing all 90 plus of those volunteers into a series of work groups organized around topics that we will be exploring in order to put together a comprehensive action plan for our community along those topic areas. Tonight, we're talking about 4 topics: community education, community partnerships, business and commerce, and events and programs. We've broken this into 20-minute segments for each of those topic areas, and we will do our best to try to keep the conversation moving. Tomorrow night, we will have another listening session. There'll be around 4 other topic areas. We know we're not going to be able to get to everyone's comments and questions within 90 minutes today and 90 minutes tomorrow. This is part of a conversation that the community needs to have over many weeks and months and years. Understanding that, we will try to take as many comments and questions as we can during this call. And if we don't get to you, we will share contact information at the end of this call so that you can email us and continue to express your thoughts and your opinions. I also just want to add that tonight's conversation is not so much for us to simply share what we've seen and what we've experienced, but to really start to think about how do we take that next step. I read an opinion piece in the New York Times today that talked about Black Lives Matter and what comes next, and that recognizing and saying and owning that Black Lives Matter is only the first of what could be considered a 12-step program for America. If we've taken step 1, how do we get to step 2? Tonight is about starting to inch our way as a community towards step 2, towards thinking about not just recognizing that Black Lives Matter, not just recognizing that people of color in our community need to be celebrated and uplifted, but how do we actually begin to take action as a community that moves us toward that goal? So that's what we're all about tonight. That's enough for me. I'm really here to listen to all of you and to support Nichelle and Zabine. So I'm going to turn it over to them as the co-chairs of the Council on Race and Equity.
Thanks so much, Ivy. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes to introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I moved to Chappaqua in 1978 with my family, and I attended Roaring Brook and Bell School, Horace Greeley High School, left for college and graduate school, and then came back to raise my family 12 years ago. So I have a graduated senior and a rising junior. Professionally, I'm a lawyer by training, corporate law, mergers and acquisitions. I did big law in the city, and then in-house at an industrial gases company then moved to the business side of mergers and acquisitions. And most recently, I'm an independent director of a publicly traded specialty chemicals company. Most importantly, I am a resident of Newcastle and really invested in seeing our community do better, be better for all of its residents. So I'm going to start with the first group, and then, or Sabine, do you want to do your introduction and then swing back over?
Yeah, sure. So thank you, Ivy and Michelle, and to all of you that have joined. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sabine Mirza. I live here in Chappaqua with my husband and two young children, soon to have a third in a few weeks. We moved here to Chappaqua from Dubai, where we spent the last 10 years. Before that, I lived in Brooklyn, where I was born and raised. You know, for us, this is very, very important for a number of reasons. We have children in the community. We are minorities in the community. And like many of you, we were very deeply concerned and upset by many of the things that we have heard over the last several months. And then as we heard from members of the community, to realize it's not just been the last several months, it's been a long history of this kind of activity and disturbing behavior in our town. Professionally, I'm a negotiator. My background is in investment banking. I work now with the government in procurement and purchasing, and I negotiate contracts on behalf of some of the largest suppliers in the world as it pertains to CapEx and some M&A work, which Michelle is intimately familiar with as well. So again, today's session is really just for us to listen to your ideas. Michelle and I will take turns introducing each topic. We'll remind you of a little bit of the background of the topic and some of the questions we're hoping to answer. We do see a lot of the CRE members. We invite everybody to please contribute their ideas. We are here to listen. Lyle, if I'm not mistaken, they'll raise their hand and then you will moderate and call them out. So please do raise your hands and then we will get to each and every single one of you one by one. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Sabine. So I'm going to introduce the first topic, which is our first subgroup, and that is community education. And if you saw the advertisements, you saw the prompts, and this group is going to leverage the library, the PTA groups, and student organizations and other educational resources to facilitate greater action, as well as understanding and awareness of racial equity and social justice in the Newcastle community. So the prompt questions that we gave you, I'll read them all together and then we'll open it up for people to raise their suggestions. The first is, how can we involve students and parents in committing to anti-racist efforts? The second, how can we support increasing the number of people of color in leadership roles? The third, how can we encourage and promote diversity in local educational resources? The fourth, what additional resources or extracurricular programs should we be looking at to ensure greater education on the topic of racial equity in our schools and our community at large? So we would ask you now to raise your hands if you have any suggestions or comments. We haven't limited your time, but we ask that you just be respectful of all the other people who might want to participate. So we'll be taking notes. Does anybody want to share on that first topic?
Okay, Maxine Rubin is first up. Maxine, you should be live now.
Hi. I think this is a great thing that we're trying to do here. And what I'm really hoping that in terms of education, there has to be a point where, from a historical perspective, these kids know how this all happened, why it's happening, from the very beginnings of this country and even beyond. And if there's no history being taught, really being taught, and then confirmed with discussion amongst the kids and their families, it has to happen in that, to me, that has to, it has to come out from there. So I'm wondering how that can be done in this committee with respect to getting that out. And questions, that the kids should be having, how do they feel basically their thoughts about being white, or the kids who are white, the other thoughts of other kids when they first, the kids of color, when they first felt, that something was off and they were treated different. There's a lot of things, but there has to be civil engagement and there has to be a historical perspective. So I'm wondering how everyone feels about, getting that kind of done.
Thanks, Maxine. So I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing historical perspective and I'm hearing courageous conversations, which I think are critically important. And I'm not going to say that we have all the answers tonight, because the purpose of the meeting is to really have the people who are serving on this committee take the thoughts into consideration as they prepare their plans over the summer. But I absolutely agree. We really need to be thinking about what historical perspective we're going to present and in what formats, inside of school, outside of school, extracurricular, how the student organizations can help, and how we facilitate those courageous conversations. So I thank you for that comment, and our team will be working on that.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Maxine.
Thank you, Maxine. The next person up is Jonathan Klein. Jonathan, you should unmute yourself and you should be able to talk.
Okay. Do you hear me okay?
We hear you.
Awesome. Hi, Nichelle.
Hi, Jonathan. My neighbor.
I think that the best way to involve students in the process of kind of moving to phase 2 is to show them that we take this whole issue very seriously by beginning the process of changing the name of Horace Greeley High School. Our son made this point to the Board of Education about 1.5 years ago, did a whole presentation about Horace Greeley's really horribly racist remarks about African Americans and about Chinese immigrants. He called, even though Greeley is renowned for being an outspoken abolitionist and very courageous in using his position as the most powerful newspaper editor in the country to advocate for the end of slavery. What we've seen very clearly in recent weeks and for many decades before that is that you don't have to be in favor of slavery in order to be a racist. You can be, I doubt that most of the racists that we encounter today would advocate for a return to slavery. But, Horace Greeley referred to the newly freed Black Americans as a lazy, worthless race. He called them ignorant and barbarous. He said that the Chinese immigrants who had come to build the railroads were filthy and that all of the Chinese women were prostitutes. And he not only said this publicly, he said it privately. He used his newspaper to spread these words, and he said it to his friends in letters. And, it's been convenient to say, well, listen, that was then, that's how people talked, but even at the time, it was regarded as repugnant by Greeley's supporters. And we really have to understand that, we all know that Greeley ran for president once upon a time. But very few people know that he ran for president against Ulysses S. Grant when Grant was running for re-election. And Greeley ran on a platform of undoing Reconstruction. Ulysses S. Grant had been a champion of Reconstruction. He created the Justice Department in order to round up the Ku Klux Klan specifically and sent federal troops to the South to enforce the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And Greeley wanted to undo all that. That's our Horace Greeley. So I know that it would be a process, but what better way to start a conversation at every level of education in this town to teach why we're changing the name of our school and to get the students involved in the process of figuring out the name that we ought to use for it. I think it's a phenomenal opportunity, and I think if we really mean what we say about supporting and uplifting minorities in our community, that this would be a very powerful statement and an acknowledgement that the times have changed and we're no longer okay with a person who in his entirety is not the role model that we want for our community or for our children.
Thank you, Jonathan. I really appreciate those comments. I remember last year when we were having conversations about the work your son was doing, and I do believe that it's the right time to really revisit this and have that taken into consideration, particularly as we talk about the historical perspective, right? So it is duly noted, consider changing the name of Horace Greeley based on what Horace Greeley represented. So we will definitely keep that, we will have that on their list for the group to review.
Thanks, Michelle. And thank you everyone for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jonathan. The next person up is Nicole Ritchie.
Hello, Nicole.
Nicole, you might want to unmute your audio. There you go. Nope. Nicole, try unmuting your audio again. No luck. We'll come back to you, Nicole. Just try, see if you can work on it a bit. We can't control it from here. Let me go to Anna. I'm going to call you Anna H because I'm going to butcher your last name, but I don't want to do that. So here you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, Anna, we can hear you.
Hi, Miss Elliott. How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
So I am a student
What?
at Horace Greeley High School. I'm going to be a junior. And I wanted to talk about in like our curriculum, I feel that we should focus on like Black people's achievements too, because especially like during Black History Month, because we don't do it at all. And I feel like that would be a great way to like celebrate Black people in our school. And I feel like we need to focus on like how they were very like helpful and the good that they did in our society, because I don't think we focus at that at all. So it was just a suggestion, but I just wanted to come in and say that.
That's great, Anna Harasimowicz. Thank you so much. Excellent point. That's right. We need to, as we focus on expanding how people react to and understand IPOC and their accomplishments and what they've contributed to society. That's a great point. So adding that to the curriculum, we will have that on the list, and you're the student voice on that team, so you can also raise that in that group. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
Okay, Nicole, have you had any luck unmuting yourself?
Hello?
Guess not. Hello, Nicole.
I hear you.
Yeah, I didn't
There
have
you
my
go.
hand. Yeah, I didn't have my hand raised. I don't know how you got my hand raised on that.
Oh, you did not have your hand raised. Yeah, it
No.
was raised on the computer. Okay. Well, we'll let you go then.
Okay.
Okay, that's it in terms of hand raising for this topic.
Okay.
Oh, hang on. We have one more at the last minute. Sasha Conley. Just unmute yourself. There you go.
Hi, my name is Sasha Conley. I'm a graduate of Horace Greeley High School. I graduated in 2012. I actually, in my adult life, have worked as, basically I studied why students weren't accessing services in our academic libraries. I worked one-on-one with a lot of fresh college students coming out of a lot of schools like ours. And I think that what we found was that we actually wrote an academic paper about it. So I'd love to talk more about the libraries in our community and how we could use our libraries. But basically, I think one of the conversations that would be beneficial to have is talking about trauma within our community and the trauma that a lot of marginalized groups experience and why that makes marginalized people often feel unable to access services. So, I mean, I think that's like, obviously all these questions are very long conversations to be had in and of themselves, but I definitely echo what's been said about the combination of like understanding the historical context as well as celebrating the achievements of BIPOC communities. And also, I think definitely like seeing BIPOC individuals in leadership is very important, and how exactly we go about hiring individuals, I think is a complex issue, because we definitely need to include in job descriptions that, you know, supporting diverse individuals is a key component of, I think, every educator's job and every, you know, staff position that's a service role within our community. So I think prioritizing individuals who have that experience and then creating infrastructure within the institutions in our community to cultivate that learning is key.
That's an excellent point. Excellent point, Sasha. Thank you. And I just want to make sure that I've heard correctly, as we've noted. So it's first the trauma experienced by marginalized groups is part of a conversation that we need to have and understand. And then the importance of BIPOC individuals in leadership and how we recruit and support those leaders. Did I capture it all?
Yeah, and also I think fair compensation for the work that goes in. You know, if we're expecting, like, my mom's a teacher in the district, and I think like there's, you know, understandably there's calls out now to say, you know, can people lead groups for, you know, talking about diversity or whatnot? And like, I think it's very important that we ensure that the folks doing this leadership and cultivating these groups are fairly compensated.
Another excellent point, Sasha, because I find sometimes those of us who've done this professionally have done our day jobs, and we had to do this as the side job on top of. So that there should be compensation as well as these issues are addressed is a great point. Appreciate it. Thanks, Sasha.
Sorry. Thank you, Sasha. Next person up is Victoria Alzapidi.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Victoria. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Great, thanks.
Good. Thank you so much for this initiative and for the work that you're doing and for having these sessions tonight and tomorrow. I would encourage, I don't know if you've contemplated doing additional sessions, because I know some folks who are not available this week who would love to participate. So I think the more, the better. So that's just a little suggestion. So my background, I'm a former civil rights public interest attorney, and have done a lot of work in schools, in middle schools and high schools around discrimination issues, and also have created and facilitated diversity and inclusion programs. So just first of all, I want to put myself out there as a resource if I can be of help in any way. And then, you know, I'm thinking about a lot of the great suggestions that people have made so far tonight. And I think in addition to the history, the current state of affairs, politically, socially, is really important. I also think there's such a value in storytelling and personal storytelling. The night that the school board had their call-in session, where a lot of the students and alumni were talking about their personal experiences, I really think to continue building on that, continuing to involve those students and alumni, to have those voices and the personal impact. I think so many times education can focus on the intellectual and the academic, and understanding the impact that discrimination and bias and a lot of these dynamics have on individual people's lives, personally, professionally, in school, in the community, in the world, is so important for students, educators, parents, other adults in the community, everyone, even merchants, to really understand that experience and develop more empathy. So to whatever extent we can continue to include those voices in the educational curriculum, in special events, et cetera, and also in a leadership kind of capacity. So to whatever extent ongoing committees can be established, policy development groups that include those voices and those perspectives, to embed those moving forward so that this is, as wonderful as this initiative is, so that it continues to live on and have powerful, positive impact internally in the schools and the community as well.
That's great, Victoria. Thank you. Another great point. We will have your name down for D&I programs, you said, that you're interested in, but storytelling, I think, is so valuable, right? Because it makes it personal. So it's not just that BIPOC person out there, it's my neighbor, it's my classmate, and this is their story. And I think that when it becomes personalized, I agree. It helps with empathy. So I appreciate that.
Of course, thanks so much. Good night. Thanks again.
Okay, next we have Kimberly Carey. Kimberly, you can unmute yourself and.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, terrific. Sorry. Actually, I raised my hand prior to Sasha coming on and touching on something that has been brought up since. I think with respect to leaders, we live in such a fairly homogenized community here. While that may or may not change, I think we can change our leaders and people who help lead our children in the schools. I think we really do need to look into the school structure, be it teachers, vice principals, so on and so forth, and in the community in general. But I think it's really, really important to have not such a homogenized group of people teaching and really helping raise our children. I love the idea of the storytelling. I think that is a wonderful way to go about it. But I think we really need to have a greater mixture of people in our whole education system in this town. I think that really would help a lot. And I do think that that's something that we need to consider. I'm in a different working group. This is not mine, but it is something that I think is really important. That's really all I have to say at this point about this topic.
That's great, Kimberly. I appreciate that. So we heard we need more diversity in our teachers and leaders, those who are influencing our children. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think that's our 20 minutes for this slot, but do remember, it happened quickly, I think. But we're going to put our information up because we really want to hear everything that everybody is saying and sharing. So we want you to continue to, you can email us, we can distribute your ideas to the groups, and we'll continue this discussion. So thank you everyone for contributing to that first section. Sabine?
Thank you, Nichelle. So we move on to topic 2, which is community partnerships. So this is really a work group focused on building bridges. So building bridges with organizations, everyone from hospitals, nonprofits, environmental groups, emergency services, police, ambulance, interfaith organizations, any kind of partner entity that you believe would add value to and promote our mission to achieve sustainable racial equity in Newcastle. And Victoria mentioned it, and many of you mentioned it. We're not looking to do this just in the short term. We want this to be a long-term, permanent, sustainable change. So some of the questions we've asked you to consider. First, what types of educational opportunities should be incorporated into onboarding activities for community leaders to better understand the backgrounds of the different populations they serve? Another question was, how can we encourage better representation of BIPOC in community partner organizations, any specific internships or mentoring relationships? For Newcastle law enforcement, what training is currently provided addressing unconscious bias, excessive use of force, and general over-policing towards BIPOC, and maybe some of your recommendations around that? And then how do we ensure that consequences are proportional to the offense regardless of the race of the offender? So with that, I'd like to open it up. If you could raise your hands, and Lyle, if you could please support.
Yes, we have Lincoln Powell, who I'm going to let in.
Sure.
And Lincoln, you want to just take your, there you go, good.
Okay. Yeah, this actually is a big project like what we're doing currently, but it ties into everything that we're trying to address. So Houston has the Rothko Chapel, and then also has the Elworth Kelly Temple of Light. And so what we could actually set up is Aunt Sui Sanctuary. Aunt Sui is actually a African artist, born initially in Ghana, but is actually lives in Nigeria now, and he's well respected. The Tate, MoMA, Brooklyn, the Met, they all have his pieces. And it could be like a shaded outdoor space with educational stations and art pieces and weatherproof plexiglass. And it would address actually community education. It would address community partnerships. And it would address business and commerce, since it's actually could be a potential, tourist site. And actually could coordinate events and programs at that facility. So community outreach can be completed through the art and culture and education. And what we could do is we could partner with Horace Greeley House, or we could change that name too. Anyway, it could also, we could partner with Historical Hudson Valley. And I already actually talked to Horace Greeley House, and I told them about the benefits of NARM. NARM is the North American Reciprocal Museum. And what's interesting is major institutions are part of it. And I suggest that they be part of it to actually expand their membership and additional visitors, but they never caught on in terms of the benefits. So there's a lot of potential benefits from this in terms of having a sanctuary. And it could actually promote tourism within town with awareness, of course.
Absolutely. And thank you, Lincoln. And I think that's a really important point. If we have a visible, physical, living, breathing, educational facility, and you, as you mentioned, people are engaging and learning through immersion in art, learning about the artists, learning about the lessons. Certainly the partnerships you mentioned with the Horace Greeley House, Historical Hudson Valley, NARM. I've noted these all down, and we will look into this, because I think this is one definite thing that's missing. We talk about is that we don't have any real visible engagement with anything in the town, and this would be a great way to do that. So thank you so much, Lincoln.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, we have Rebecca Canziani. Sorry, Rebecca, if I screwed that up. And you want to take yourself off mute?
Hi.
Hi, Rebecca.
So I'm in a different work group, but I just wanted to say for this one that there's been a list going around that was created by some Greeley alumni of alternatives to calling 911 in Westchester County. And I think if this work group doesn't already have access to that list, it's basically a list of a lot of different mental health and social service providers and organizations within Westchester that could be potential partners and could be a great way to kind of connect the community with other options when it comes to dealing with mental health and social service that isn't the police, because that's not where they're trained. And
Right.
So I think that's really important, especially in the larger Black Lives Matter movement conversation about police and about what types of services are actually helpful to people. So that's a really great list, and I can send that on to you guys so that work group has access to that. But other like homeless shelters and mental health organizations within Westchester, I think is important if we're stepping into this larger conversation about Black Lives Matter and the defund the police conversation. This will be really important.
Absolutely. And if you could share that list with us, Becca, that would be so greatly appreciated. And, we were just talking about trauma earlier. I think it was Sasha that mentioned it, right? Where people have suffered some serious trauma where they are hesitant or unable or unwilling to ask for help because of fear of consequences. So if we can normalize outreach to other groups that are not perceived to be a threat to them based on their experiences and trauma, this would go a long way, aside from the optics of the work that we're doing, to actually do some genuine good. So that would be so greatly appreciated. if you could share that. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally will.
Okay, thanks, Becca.
Okay, next we have Ronnie Diamondstein.
Hi, Ronnie.
Hi, I actually just have a question. I'm in the education group, but just listening to the last comments. There are a lot of resources that we can reach out to in different communities, not just in Newcastle. So that would be something we could do, right?
Absolutely.
Because I'm getting some good ideas as I'm just listening to everyone. So I just wanted to clarify that and confirm it. So that's basically my contribution. I'm making a list of different organizations that might be able to help us or that we can branch out to.
Yeah, and you know, that's super important because Newcastle doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? And we want to not only affect change within our community, but be a lighthouse for other communities because we are so ingrained and intertwined with so many of our neighbors. So Ronnie, if you're making a list, that would be invaluable for how we can partner with our neighbors, neighboring towns. That would be so greatly appreciated.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ronnie.
Okay, let's see. Next we have Geetha Nathan, or Nathan. Sorry, Geetha.
Hi, Geetha.
Oh, hi. I'm on a different committee, but the reason I'm here is just to share some ideas that I had. I have lived in the community since 2006, but it's only recently that I've got involved in this activity and also being part of a committee, and I'm happy I'm able to do that. And I think all this was initiated because of what happened at work, because I work for a nonprofit organization. It's a nonprofit organization for all the independent bookstores in the country. So recently we have been doing a lot of education. So I was wondering if that is something that the town can consider. One, the staff in our office went through a training for racial and equity. And we also provide training for all our members, which is about close to 1,800 members, independent bookstores in the country who can also attend the training. And as part of the training, I realized that there is a big need for a space for BIPOC members, where they would like to be by themselves and discuss their issues and not have others in that group. I didn't realize the value of this, but once I went through the training, I thought that that was an excellent idea. So I just wanted to share that here. And also this could be some kind of a training that the school district could provide for the faculty and parents, like PTA, any group that is associated with the school district. I think going through some kind of a formal training, I think it would help everyone.
Yeah, and I think that's really profound and really important because a lot of people don't realize that there are little to maybe no safe spaces for BIPOC to be by themselves and to share safely their own experiences, their own fears. So I think that's number one, extremely important. Number two, training not just for faculty, but for parents. You know, we have new student orientation, it should be integrated, new parent orientation should be integrated. So these are all things that we're looking at, and certainly, you know, we have to start by educating the families, and that's very, very important, Geetha, and thank you so much for bringing that up.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, next we have Lincoln Powell again.
Hi, Lincoln.
Just to add something in addition, yes, support groups are actually very helpful. We have that in the medical field, left and right, cardiac, oncology. So that's like essential in terms of letting the person know that they're not the only person that is facing this dilemma. So I'm fully supportive of like getting funding for support groups and having a professional run it. So that's actually a very positive thing to accomplish.
Yeah, I agree. And thank you for bringing that up. You know, it goes hand in hand with what Geetha was saying about
that's why I reinforce that.
Yeah, and I think the point that you made where it has to be done by a professional, because it is important, right? And it's not something that can be kind of untangled or just talked about regularly. Some of these issues are very deeply rooted, and we want to make sure that people are getting tools with expert guidance. So thank you for bringing that up, Lincoln. That is very important.
Yeah, that's the most important, expert guidance.
Exactly. Thank you. Thanks, Lincoln.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, I think that's it for this section. We have no more people who want to talk.
Or talk to me. They'd rather talk to Nichelle.
Everybody's getting shy.
Or talk to everybody. They want to send emails. We'll take it whatever way we can get it. Thanks.
Lyle, did one person just actually raise their hand? I thought I saw. Oh.
No.
I see Steffi Shen and Sunu Kim have raised their hands.
Hi, my name
and
is.
there she is.
I'm from the class of 2017. Just in relation to giving a safe space for BIPOC people, I would think it would be a great idea to find some kind of way to create an alumni network or a safe online platform, perhaps for CCS students of color to talk about their struggles if they're feeling alone from the lack of diversity at school. So during the past few years, and I was in college, I found a lot of online communities to specifically address issues relating to people who have struggles as BIPOC. And I think it's great to find people that are older than you to just give you advice on the challenges. So it'd be great to work with the alumni. I know when I was younger, I would have loved to have somebody to give me that advice about the best way to handle like hate speech, who do I talk to, you know, those kinds of things can be dealt with these kinds of resources. So if there's any way we could create a group for like maybe anonymously even to create a more safe space, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing is kind of like a joint mentoring / support kind of ecosystem online. You know, it's easy to set up, easy to access. People feel safe, and as you mentioned, it can be done anonymously. I know Nichelle is working on some alumni networks as well, and that's absolutely something that we want to be building out even for existing students, that the alumni can maybe buddy up and support. But that is a very important point, and we are looking at that very seriously. So thank you, Steffi, for bringing that up.
Okay, Sunu Kim has just raised his hand. And you want to take yourself off? Yep, there you go.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Hi, Sunu.
Hi, I'm a junior at Greeley, and I'm part of this committee. So I was thinking about internships, and currently Newcastle United for Youth has summer and student internship programs that a lot of Greeley students participate in. And right now they work to improve teenage health using topics of alcohol and drug abuse. But I was wondering if similar programs like that could be established using regarding topics like this. Because right now, like the students have to brainstorm and research themselves and then come up with topics of like getting back to the community and improving and actually implementing and taking action. So like currently, like all students kind of say they understand what's going on and how to like that it needs to work, but they might just be saying that. So if students will be able to like research themselves, I think they'll see the problem more clearly for themselves. And then also right now they get compensation with like $120 after like 2 weeks, but I don't know about the money or anything like that, but that's like another detail later. But I think those programs will be helpful because a lot of students already participated in it, so it may be more accessible to a lot of students.
Yeah, and thank you, Sunu, because that is really important, especially since internships are a stepping stone into, you know, careers and go a long way in shaping the way a lot of people think and their perspective as they enter the workforce. So that's something that I've noted, and I appreciate you for bringing that up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, Maxine is back.
Hi, Maxine.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I'm not in this group, but I think that I could lend a hand in terms of environmental outreach to organizations. I'm on the Sustainability Advisory Board. I do an environmental podcast. I know a lot of the people, and there's a lot of convergence between environment and social justice. And I think it's very important that we reach out to these groups as well, because I think they would partner, with something like this. And so I'm just happy to just lend, anything I can give you guys in that area.
Yeah, that would be greatly appreciated because, it goes back to as well what we were talking about, access to resources and knowledge and support in the community and, even things like food insecurity. So Maxine, any resources or organizations that you would advise us to align with your direction in that area would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, I'll definitely, there's a lot of groups in Westchester that are just, phenomenal and have great people and would definitely want to, lend a hand and be involved. So I think that's something that's important. So I will definitely get information out to the head of this group, I guess, or you guys directly. Is that the best way?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maxine.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want to take one more before we switch over?
Yep, one more.
Okay, Sasha Conley.
Hi, Sasha.
Hang on a second.
Hi, I love the ideas that are being brought up, and what Maxine was just talking about kind of gave me this sort of grand vision of like what an interdisciplinary, like intersectional, like conference would look like for our community. Like, I think that getting all of these different, discussions about different areas of social justice, that's where we really have strength in numbers, right? It's like when, the LGBTQ community can come together and, we can talk about issues about race, because, and the environmental movement and all these different, groups that have this history of organizing collaboratively, especially if, you're someone who's multiply marginalized and you need a space that you can, be your entire self in. So obviously gathering in large groups is like super not on the table, but I know the Black Students Union led this professional development workshop online for educators. And that's like more of like a larger long-term goal, I think. But on top of these ideas of like getting, identity groups together, support groups together, mentorships together, I think all this kind of cross issue organizing could create some like really wonderful collaboration. And I would love, like you said, for our community to be a place, like I would love if people were like, Westchester, like Chappaqua had this incredible conference, or whatever. Like that would be a really wonderful thing for our community to look like in the future.
Yeah, and I think intersectionalism is absolutely critical when you're talking about race. And for those of you that are here and that may not be familiar with what that means, it's that there are multiple marginalizations when you're talking about race, and how do we make sure that we are inclusive? Even under the BIPOC spectrum, there are so many other marginalized groups that we want to be inclusive and considerate about. And I think it was Audre Lorde that said, I am paraphrasing, but your chains may be different than mine, but as long as you are shackled, I am not free, right? So that's intersectionalism, and that's super important. And I love this idea of a conference when it's safe for us to congregate, because I would love for Chappaqua, as you mentioned, to be known as, wow, they're really thought leaders and they're really the model to follow. And we would love to be that model, Sasha. So thank you so much for bringing that up.
Okay, I think it's over to Michelle.
Yep.
Thank you. The next topic is business and commerce. And this group is going to be focused on attracting more diverse businesses to the area, increasing supplier diversity, improving and having more targeted budget allocations, creating a more diverse ecosystem for commerce and trade, filling gaps in town businesses, and fulfilling unmet needs as it pertains to the type of businesses in demand for Newcastle residents. So they've got a lot on their plate. And the questions that we put out for the group to consider this evening are, what are some products and services our town is still missing? What factors contribute to you going elsewhere for products and services, even those present within our town? What are some incentives or initiatives we can roll out to attract diverse businesses to Newcastle? How do we advocate and facilitate equal representation and success of BIPOC businesses in Newcastle? And finally, how do we promote existing BIPOC-owned businesses in Newcastle? So if anybody has any ideas on those, we'd love to hear them.
Okay, Geetha is back on. Let me just add her in. Geetha, just on mute. There you go.
Yeah. Hi. Since I'm dealing with e-commerce at work and dealing with a lot of independent and small merchants, so I just noticed that I think the first thing for our community would be to bring more merchants into the community, because we are seeing a lot of empty storefronts, and it's really the number of empty storefronts are just increasing every 6 months, and no one seems to be stable. And number two is to make it more affordable, because when we talk about BIPOC, we are also talking about socioeconomical situations also. So we have to take that into consideration and make sure that these businesses that we bring into town are affordable. And maybe simple restaurants that people can just go to, which are not too expensive. And also bring more, consider BIPOC as also part of the farmers market. So we have more diverse merchants in the farmers market too.
Wow, that's great, Geetha. Thanks. So more merchants, make it more affordable, and we should take into account socioeconomic considerations, consider things like restaurants and BIPOC a part of the farmers market. I love that idea. So that's great, Geetha. Thank you for that.
Okay, next we have Robbie Gottlieb.
Hi, Robbie Gottlieb here, class of 07. I'm on a different committee, but I just wanted to piggyback on something that Geetha said in terms of potential policy, in terms of granting licenses to businesses or to vendors at the farmers market. Like maybe if there's, like maybe it's, I'm wondering if it's possible to put into place, like as businesses or vendors are approved, that they're approved, like, and that triggers like 2 more additional vendors of color or BIPOC or businesses of color to be approved as well, just so that we put in kind of institutional framework to incentivize this kind of growth. Just a small idea. Thanks.
Thanks, Robbie. I appreciate that. So I want to make sure that I understand. So we're talking about policies with respect to granting licenses to businesses. So for every majority vendor approval we want to make room from a policy perspective. I want to make sure I'm saying this correctly, for other vendors of color to also participate. Is that correct?
Exactly. So I don't know what the legal ramifications of doing something like this are, but so that if you do inevitably grant a license to a vendor that is majority owned, that you're also, that the town is incentivized to complement that with ideally more, not just equal, because we're obviously making up a gap that is much bigger than just solved by adding one more.
Yeah. Okay. Understood. Right. We'll take a note of that and look at that. And I think part of your idea as well speaks to how we even attract vendors, right? And the people, because I don't know if BIPOC vendors say, gee, Chappaqua is the place to go to do business, right? How do we really bring them in so they know that this is a place where they're welcome and where their businesses can be successful? So great points on the licensing. Thank you.
Okay, next is Young Ju Yoon. Sorry, I didn't pronounce that right, but
Hi.
there you go.
Yes, hi, I'm a member of the communication, but I just want to say something about the business and commerce. So we are talking about bringing the vendors, like more affordable vendors, or the stores opening here. And actually, I agree there are a lot of space that's empty here, and there's a Chappaqua Crossing that I haven't seen filling up like for 2 years. But also the thing is, it's not just bringing the vendors is going to be, make more viable. I think that we have to have like, something that can bring the customers here too. Okay. But I just noticed one thing that a couple of weeks ago, we are just driving from Connecticut to here. I think that we're passing a Scotts Commerce area, like right close to the border of Connecticut and New York. So they put a lot of signs. I was quite surprised. I think that, they put a lot of signs about Black Lives Matter, and that it just made me feel so happy to see the signs. It's, just make me feel more included. But just wonder that what our commerce here doing anything about it.
Thanks, Youngju. So I think, and help me understand. So we're talking about, which is a great point, bringing customers as well as vendors, because vendors aren't going to come and try to sell if people aren't here to support their businesses. But then your second point was specifically about commerce having a reaction or a comment about Black Lives Matter and having a voice in that, and that the community is aware of, so that other BIPOC members of the community or neighboring communities understand that we're a community that supports that. Is that correct?
Right. So other areas, the people from other area, when they're passing by, they see the signs or, this community is more inclusive and we want to come here and shop.
Yes.
And then only one place I saw the sign was actually the Starbucks in downtown Chappaqua. Otherwise, I haven't seen any other things.
That's a good point. That's a great point. What are we, what are our businesses really saying to the communities about being inclusive or not,
right,
with signage or commentary or not? It's a good point. Yeah. Thanks, Youngju.
Okay, next we have Johanna Nayyar.
Hi, everyone. It's Johanna.
Hi, Johanna.
Hi. I'm just piggybacking onto the business and commerce part of the section. Considering we have a lot of empty retail space in the area, is there any way the town can, help with lower rents or in some way with not long leases and, pop-up kind of stores which can help Black-owned businesses, Black-owned women businesses, just so that we can see a lot more diversity in the area. That was one part of my question. And then the second part of which I'm leading off into is, how we have a Chappaqua Book Festival. I'm wondering if, we can do something along those same sidelines and kind of take a tangent off and go into like, Chappaqua Commerce sponsors Black-owned business, and kind of we like become a forefront and kind of example to other neighboring towns. So I'm just going into different conversation threads over here, but basically this is what I'm thinking about.
Great, Johanna, thanks. So we're talking about in dealing with the empty retail space, there's a question about whether the town can assist with rent or bringing in pop-up stores with BIPOC businesses. And then second, for Chappaqua Commerce to sponsor Black or other minority-owned businesses to come in. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thanks, Joanna.
Okay, Lincoln Powell.
I don't want to speak too much, but what brings people into downtown?
Did we lose Lincoln?
Yeah, we lost it for a second.
Okay.
Sorry,
So-
Lincoln. Should be
That's
back.
right. Man, it must have been hacked. So what brings
Not yet.
Okay, not been hacked. What brings people into downtown are restaurants and then unique shops. That's what makes the Village very popular, parts of Brooklyn very popular. And we have a lot of artists in town. So we should actually help them with expressing themselves. And then we have potentially good opportunities for unique, diverse ethnic cuisine to be available in town. So those should be encouraged somehow. And in terms of encouraging it, gosh, we have it subsidized by a foundation in terms of the overhead. Or I hate to say this, but in terms of tax breaks, because we need the revenue in town for various maintenance. So there are like potentially different ways to go about it. Maybe sponsoring SBA loans, co-sign SBA loans with people who are very creditworthy to help them out so they get a better rate. I don't know. So that's what I'm just suggesting.
Yeah, more great ideas, Lincoln. Thank you. How we support downtown restaurants and unique shops, help Chappaqua artists, potentially ethnic cuisine, and consider foundation support to subsidize SBA loans. Got it. Great. Thanks, Lincoln.
Okay, next up we have Cynthia Shams.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, Cynthia.
Hi. So kind of building on the SBA comment, which I think is really very viable. I am going to guess that rents in Chappaqua are very high. I don't have a business here, but that's going to be my guess. And so I think that one of the things we on this committee can put some thought and focus into, or something I'd like to focus on, is what we can do to assist landlords and also assist potential minority business owners who might be interested in having a business here, filling up some of these many empty spaces in our downtown and elsewhere, but can't quite, they believe they can't make it in terms of rent. So what can we as a committee do to look up SBA resources, as was mentioned, but also specifically minority-owned business resources? Is there some way that we, either through the town or through our committee, can start providing resources, whether it's information, seminars? I'm not exactly sure how we would go about doing that, but some sort of outreach to minority business communities that are based elsewhere and might actually be really interested in being here if we give them the support and actively court their presence here. At the same time, working with the landlords here in town to figure out, what we can do about having so many empty buildings.
Yeah, that's great, Cynthia. So it's really a two-pronged approach, right? It's assisting the landlords so that we can bring the businesses in, and then also working with minority business owners, providing information, seminars, outreach to bring them in. That's a great idea. Love that the group look at that. Thank you.
Okay, right now we have no hands up. So maybe we should move to the next topic.
Yep.
Okay, Dawn, you had asked just very quickly who chairs the partnership committee because you had an idea for a book festival. It's Hermie and Charles, and I can have her connect with you on Facebook and over email. That would be so wonderful to do that. So moving into our last topic for today, it's events and programs. And this work group is really focused on planning of the programs, arts, cultural, historical, educational, etc., to bring to Newcastle to honor BIPOC culture, the culture of many of our town's residents. So looking at everything from fundraisers, drives, special camps, events in conjunction with parks and recreation and all the various town facilities, committees, organizations. So some of the questions we'd like for you to consider is first, what existing events or programs would you like to see have more of a racial equity and or socioeconomic diversity lens? The next question is, are there any events, programs that you have heard of or experienced that you think can effectively communicate or kickstart our CRE goals, our council's goals? The next question is, what are events that we can offer to attract audiences that may not necessarily be attracted to racial equity related events, BLM rallies, etc. So how do we reach the groups that maybe we need to reach especially? And then lastly, how can we make our town events more racially inclusive? So with that, I'd like to open it up, and Lyle, it's all you.
Hermine Charles is number one.
Hi, Hermine.
Actually, it's Kyler, my daughter. I would like to say that to add on to events that we already have, the book fair was an amazing example from Mrs. Nayyar. I would like to just say that I don't think that there's enough variety. Although it's like a wonderful display of different authors, we could definitely include more books by Black and LGBTQIA+ authors, because not to intrude on the educational space, but I have never I've never read a book by a Black author for school. I think it would be amazing if we could explain to this town why we have a holiday like Kwanzaa to give back to the Black community, a culture, a holiday of their own, and that is not explained in our schools. I think those are my main points. Is all. Yeah, we can make events for explaining more of Black culture.
Thanks, Kyler. So just to recap, and I think you made some really important points. First, the book festival is an incredible asset to our town, and there's certainly opportunity to increase the variety, have greater spotlight on BIPOC Black authors. Certainly, we need to be incorporating Black writers, authors, artists into our curriculum. That to me is of paramount importance, that you haven't read a book written by a Black author while you're in school. Certainly celebrating Kwanzaa, not just to say happy Kwanzaa, but to understand the significance, using events to educate. I think that's super critical. And again, this goes back to kind of what we were talking about with Lincoln earlier in the session, that if we can have some kind of immersive, interactive, visible, experiential learning, this will go a long way, and not just building community that's inclusive, but educating. So thank you so much, Kyler. Those are really fantastic points.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, does anybody else want to make comments? I see no hands. Oh, here we go. Brian Watson.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, how are you? A couple things. I think the last comment was made. It was almost like I'm thinking about everything we all never learned in school. That there's a whole curriculum we could learn about Kwanzaa, Juneteenth, the Tulsa race riots, Tuskegee Airmen, slavery in New York. All these things that I only have learned about, in the last few years at the organization I work for through its diversity and inclusion, or things like the American Indian boarding schools that took children away from their parents throughout the country. So I think there's almost like a continuing education curriculum we could build for the citizens of this town to make up for those things that we never learned when we went to school. So that's my comment.
I think that's a fantastic idea, Brian. I think that's really great. And I know there's this handbook that goes out with like all these activities at the center that the town does, like knitting and table tennis and, you know, all these other cooking classes. And maybe this is something that we can certainly offer as part of an ongoing community development. I think that's a phenomenal, phenomenal idea. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Okay, we have William Messner up.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry, we just lost him.
Oh, he's
William
back.
should be back now.
Okay.
Am I okay? You guys can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I think some things that would be beneficial to the community would definitely be like organized dialogues. Dialogues are crucial. I think it was touched upon a little bit during this forum, but yeah, dialogues, which is something I also want to get into the high school because I took a class in college focused on racial dialogues, specifically between a half white class and a half people POC class. So that I think speeches would also be good about just about racial issues and just focused on stuff going around today. And something that we also talked about in our volunteer group was a benefit concert, or more so just like a vague like idea of a concert. But I was thinking about a benefit concert, which could highlight some BIPOC members of the community, which yeah. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, and thank you, Will, for bringing that up. And I think one of the themes that we're hearing a lot of is that we just need to give a platform to the BIPOC in our community, make them more visible, highlight their skills, their talents, because we have them here at home. We don't need to look very far. And then I think your comments about dialogues, especially in the high schools, which is, you know, such formative years, and speeches, and it's really about not pretending these things don't exist, but saying we're here to talk about them, we're here to have difficult conversations, and we want to have these difficult conversations so people don't feel like they have to hide or be, you know, nervous to say something or to express their discomfort, which I think is at the root of a lot of the challenges that we have in this community. So thank you so much, Will. I think those are fantastic, fantastic ideas. Thank you.
Okay, next is Johanna.
Hi, Johanna.
Take yourself off mute, Johanna. There you go.
Hi, I'm back. I was just thinking about events and programs, and something which came to mind is the month of February, which we all know is Black History Month. And perhaps in the town of Chappaqua and Newcastle, we can do something to celebrate the month. Maybe the library can have special readers and poets, art come in, showcase local businesses which are Black owned, you know, show films, just celebrate the month and, you know, come together as a community and learn from each other the importance of why we celebrate the month of February. So perhaps that's something we can, you know, think about and discuss and talk about.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely important. And again, you know, showcasing, you know, the Black and the BIPOC members of our community, the BIPOC owned businesses, and the suggestion about the library is fantastic. You know, having Black authors, Black readers, books that are representative of Black and brown children and BIPOC children. And, you know, the celebrations of the month, and somebody had mentioned it earlier, you know, we need to learn about the Black and BIPOC members, you know, people throughout history that have contributed positively. You know, not just learning about some of the really horrible things that happened, but also learning about how they've overcome and really contributed some incredible things to this world. So thank you so much, Johanna. It's very important.
Okay, Geetha's back. Let me let you in.
Hi, Geetha.
Hi. This is just a comment to say thank you for doing this. One of the trainings that I attended, one of the questions they asked is, at what age did you realize that race is an issue, or did you start recognizing race? And I was surprised that many of my colleagues said that it was around 25, which is when they were an adult out in the real world. So if we can do something in this town that Chappaqua doesn't, or Newcastle does not become a town where kids who grow up here don't realize what this is until they actually move out into the real world, I think that would be a good thing that we will be doing for this town. And I'm really happy that this committee is taking all the efforts for it. I just wanted to say that.
Thank you so much, Geetha. And that's absolutely what we want to do. And, you know, that's some of the conversation that we've been having that led to forming this council, is that there's a bit of a bubble here where people don't realize what the world beyond is actually like. And we need to equip our community and our kids and our children with the tools to effectively navigate a world that's very different than what they might believe exists. So thank you so much, Geetha.
Okay, Maxine is back.
Hi, Maxine.
Hi. Yeah, back to that quickly. Yeah, when I moved here in 84, actually 3, I've been here a long time. One of the first questions from my neighbors when I lived here was, can you put your kids on the lawn so our kids can see what your kids look like? I never forgot that. And I never knew how to really take that, to tell you the truth. Because I didn't have a child at that point. And I moved in from the city and they thought I was from, you know, God knows what I was bringing in to the neighborhood. So back to that was an initial question in my brain about all of this. But back to the, you know, getting this out, the word out and programs. We're in COVID-19 and it's horrid. And I don't know when we're going to actually be able to, it takes a lot to get a program off and just putting it all together. I do them on getting the documentaries out for the Sustainability Advisory Board, and it's a process. We don't have actual physical space. I don't know when we're going to have actual physical space. And my question is, are we going to do programs virtually or try to get things virtually done? And how would that, you know, happen? Is there a platform that you can get, you know, hundreds of people on? I mean, it's all good to be able to get these things. There's so much we need to do and say, and so many programs we can get, and so many speakers or people, or get a conversation going. I'm just worried that this is going, you know, into next year, perhaps a year from now. So my question is, you know, sort of also logistical. How, when we get this going and hopefully get programs going, are we gonna, you know, start getting this out? Because we can't wait to have CPAC or the library or the school, you know, as a venue. So that's my thought.
Thanks, Maxine. And that's a really valid point. And, you know, none of us have a crystal ball about what's going to be the outcome of COVID or how long we're going to be in this situation. But certainly our, you know, racial inequity and social justice issues don't disappear in a pandemic. And so our efforts, you know, can't live in a pre-COVID or post-COVID world. And one of the things that were kind of the mandates, or is the mandate for each of the work groups, is that, you know, present us with recommendations that are implementable, practical, feasible, sustainable. And that means as well, how do we roll these out digitally, virtually, in ecosystems and environments where we can't meet? And I think you bring up a really, really important point. You know, racial bullying has not gone away just because the kids aren't seeing each other in schools, right? It's happening online. Education is still happening online. We are still working virtually, all of us that are in the workforce. And so that is a very, very important point. And I would beseech all of our team leaders and our work groups to please also consider that, as I know you are all already are. how we make this a reality and don't wait for the pandemic to pass. What are things we can implement immediately? Technology is an incredible enabler. It's enabling us to meet like this. It's enabling us to work. How do we use technology to drive this change and not wait? As Maxine mentioned, we don't have the luxury of time. So thank you, Maxine.
Okay, next is Robbie Gottlieb.
Hi, Robbie.
Hi. This is not necessarily a specific idea, but just like another kind of dimension of consciousness, and potentially could lead to a specific event. But I think, when John Klein was talking earlier about renaming Horace Greeley, it just got me thinking a little bit about just like the complete absence of like any within the curriculum or just like within the town that I know of, just acknowledgement of the Lenape and Wappinger tribes whose lands that Chappaqua sits on. And I just feel like that obviously can be integrated and is something as simple as like a land acknowledgement when we're talking about town businesses and different events, but could also be an opportunity. I don't think the Wappinger tribe is still, they're probably experts and historians that can speak to their culture, but I know there's like the Lenape Nation exists today. And I'm just curious, like kind of to brainstorm with other people within my committee or the other committees on like how we can do a better job about integrating their presence, whether it's in community events or in literal names of different institutions within the town, but just something that I wanted to flag that we haven't really talked about.
And thank you so much for bringing that up, because that's something that has been popping up in conversations lately and recently. Land acknowledgements, acknowledging the indigenous groups whose land we essentially live and work on, on whose backs we now benefit. And I think integrating and learning about the Wappinger tribes and the indigenous tribes local to this region that essentially this is their land that we're on. This would go also a long way in learning our history. And it was one of the first commentators that mentioned, we don't just need to teach about the issues now, we need to teach the complete historical context of where everything started. And so, Robbie, that's a really, really important point. Thank you so much for bringing that up and for highlighting the indigenous people in this town and whose land this town really is. Thank you.
Okay, next we have Dawn Greenberg.
Hi, Dawn.
Hi, I'm unmuted, I hope. So
yes,
you are.
Okay, so I have a kind of ignorant, basic, foundational question. You read national commentators and they say, focus now just on Black Lives Matter, on that, remedying it, learning about it, focus on Black Lives Matter. But BIPOC sounds to me, and what Robbie just alluded to, indigenous people. Are you also focusing on the immigrants? For example, my son is from Guatemala, and I feel like he, has his fair share of kind of microaggression. So is it all one big melting pot that BIPOC kind of encompasses?
So I will let Nichelle answer this as a Black woman about what Black Lives Matter, the movement means first. So Nichelle, I'll let you answer this as this is your lane. And then I can maybe weigh in on the IPOC element.
Okay, so I'm going to take a crack at it because I won't say that I speak for all representatives of Black Lives Matter, but I know that particular issue has to deal with the fact that while there's a perspective that, all life is of value, Black lives right now are the lives that are at risk more than any other group. So that's where the Black Lives Matter emphasis is. But I think beyond that, what we're trying to do, and then I'll shoot it back over to Sabine, is really not to totally isolate to be solely about Black lives, but it really is Black, Indigenous, people of color. That's people in this country, that's people outside of this country, people who are really non-European whites. and how we incorporate them all into the community. So even as we talk about things like, Black History Month, I mean, there's Asian American History Month, there's Hispanic, there are all those different events that if we really focused on making everybody feel included, we would be incorporating all of those different backgrounds, Indigenous people, all of those. Sabine?
Yeah, thank you, Nichelle. And what I will say also is that the Black Lives Matter movement is probably one of the most inclusive movements where they are advocating for Indigenous lives, POC lives, refugee lives, immigrant lives. They are advocating for white lives as well, white people that have died at the hands of police and as victims of police brutality. So as Nichelle mentioned, the focus is on the group that needs the most support right now, but that doesn't mean it's exclusive of any of the other groups. And many of the struggles are intersecting, and many of the marginalized groups suffer together. And the Black Lives Matter movement, again, is from what I have seen, and Nichelle and everyone else can weigh in, is one of the most inclusive and supportive movements. So in terms of what are we looking to achieve, it's the Council on Racial Equity. So we want equity amongst all races, where all races in our community, feel safe, feel heard, feel accepted. And we want to especially support the groups that do not. Black, Indigenous, refugee, immigrant, Muslim, Jewish, whoever needs support. This is what that council is here to do, not equality, equity.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. And just a quick note, the book festival is going virtual this year, but it's October 3rd. And we actually have about 25 or 30 authors of color, LGBTQ authors. So I was hoping maybe we could do a separate kind of social justice event panel. But anyway, I'll touch back with you all about that on the event side.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for your question, and thank you for not being ashamed of asking a difficult question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have time for one more person?
Yeah.
Okay, we have Yvonne Cognac.
Hi, Yvonne.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, well, actually, you just answered my question, because I think that this group should be, obviously right now we have momentum and this with Black Lives Matter, and that's really important. But I was thinking that diversity in this town, there's a lot of diversity, people who come from different backgrounds, Asian, Latin American, Hispanic, different backgrounds. And I think listening to the talks in Horace Greeley, people who are not necessarily only Black, they have also experienced bullying and issues. And so I thought that all of these should be addressed with including everyone, as you mentioned before. So that was a bit reassuring to hear that we are going to be focusing on different backgrounds. And also, just to add on the point of having ongoing conversations, I think definitely we do have to have those conversations in high school, but if possible, we should try to embed these conversations already even as a elementary school, because children need to be aware of all of these already at that young age, through books, through storytelling. But we need to create that area where younger students will be able to learn and talk as well, because I think maybe also bullying could start at that age. And third point is this just came up right now when someone was talking about online platforms and how we're going to be doing this. I don't know if an idea is through Facebook as well. I have to say that I've been quite surprised to see some comments in Chappaqua Moms, and there have been some horrible comments. So I don't know if it's possible to use actually those platforms as well to turn those negative comments into something positive, into learning.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. And I think all three of your points are really very important. So I'll just address them quickly, but I will address them because they are really important. Number one, inclusive of all races. Absolutely, right? We are here again for equity, for racial equity, all races, and to support the races at any time that need the most help. That's what we're here for. Number two, elementary school education. I completely agree. Kids are mean to each other, sometimes unintentional, but it's not that they don't see color until high school. And I think representation matters in the books that they're reading, the teachers that they're seeing, the videos from kindergarten. Understanding color blindness is facilitating racism, right? And understanding that we have to see color and understand what those colors mean. In terms of social media, the internet is a double-edged sword, so it's both a blessing and a curse. Some days I feel like it is more of a curse. There are a lot of challenges in moderating Facebook groups, especially as it comes to racial discussions. And I think as we've seen in the last several weeks and months, there's a real lack of education on how to actually do that properly, so that the POC, the Black people and the allies that get on the threads to really educate don't feel that their time, energy, efforts are wasted, trying to educate and then threads getting deleted or comments being removed. And that is something that we have a communication subcommittee set up for, which Angela Bronner-Helm is in charge of, and she's amazing. And what we want to put together is a series of guidelines on how we can engage safely, educate, have respectful discourse without making feel like Black and non-Black POC and their allies, that it's an effort in futility. And it is very delicate in how those conversations are moderated, because sometimes things that we believe we are doing are right are actually harmful. So thank you so much for bringing that up, and that is something that we are very conscious of, and I appreciate you mentioning that. Thank you, Yvonne.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's it.
Very good. So what I'll do is I'm just going to share my screen with the slide, Lyle, if you don't mind, for anyone that has additional questions. Can you guys see this?
Yep.
I'm trying. So that's my, Nichelle, and Ivy's emails. Please reach out to us at any time. And you guys know when you email us, we always respond to the best of our ability as quickly as we can. But we really, really appreciate all of you taking the time to share your ideas, to ask questions. We're having the second session for the next 4 topics tomorrow. So please come back. We need your ideas. And tell your friends and tell them to bring their ideas. And from my side, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your time, for all these amazing ideas. Thank you, Ivy. Thank you, Lyle. Thank you, Carrie, if she's still behind the scenes. We really just appreciate everybody's time tonight.
Yeah, make sure you re-register for tomorrow night's webinar, because tonight's registration is only for tonight, so come on back.
Okay. And the second registration link is in the same email that Lyle sent out. And we've also posted across some of the Facebook groups. But if you have any questions or need access to the link, please just email any one of us and we'll share that with you. All right. Ivy, any last words?
No, I want to echo the thanks that you have all given. And I want to also say a special thank you to you, Sabine and Nichelle, for moderating tonight's discussion, and for all of the work that you're doing to organize this council. I have already learned a tremendous amount. I'm looking forward to learning more and to, being an ally and to helping you to do this work and figure out how do we make real change happen in this community. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.